Hello, welcome to the channel. Today what we're going to discuss is demo number 2 of this series, and in this case we are talking about logic apps as plugins. Let's go. Okay, so this will be demo number 2 of 5, and we'll discuss logic apps as plugins as I mentioned. Now, what is a plugin? So a plugin provides extensibility for your intelligent applications that may leverage an LLM. So if you think about the ingestion, and we'll talk about that in a future demo, we ingest data, which is traditionally historical data, because the idea is that we can kind of learn from that data or reason over that data in order to kind of make predictions, recommendations, things of that nature. So that's fine, but what happens when you need to leverage some real-time data? That is data that's not likely going to be ingested into your LLM, but this is the problem that the plugin can go ahead and solve. So plugins can go ahead and unlock that additional data and can do that in real time. Now, Logic Apps is in a pretty unique position here because of our vast connector of libraries. So there's hundreds of connectors. I think there's 1,400 roughly, give or take. And so naturally you can go ahead and combine those connectors and basically build like a workflow that's going to go ahead and retrieve this information for you. So the demo I'm going to show you today is kind of a continuation of the 4th coffee series, where we're going to go ahead and use Azure Open AI Assistants, and we're going to be able to provide a vendor with the ability to look up some information that's going to come from a static document, but then also be able to look up an invoice that's going to come from a backend system. Let's go ahead, let's dive in. The next demo that we're going to talk about is using Logic Apps as a plugin. So the use case we have here is we've got our vendor or supplier that's going to interact with a conversational chatbot, in this case hosted in Azure Open AI Assistants. And there's naturally going to be some questions that the vendor can ask that we will go ahead and try to answer using the large language model, the supply chain large language model. And so this might be situations like, what are the net payment terms, or are there any penalties for performance? Now, a natural question that the vendor might also have is, what is the status of my invoice? Like, when will it be paid, or has it been paid already? And that's a situation where Logic Apps can really complement this entire solution by providing real-time access to the ERP. In this case, it's going to be Dataverse, because storing the state of all of these invoices in the LLM wouldn't be a good use of that technology. But being able to access this information in real time is actually quite compelling. So let's flip over and let's see what this looks like. All right, so I have an Azure OpenAI instance provisioned, and I can go ahead and click on the Explore Azure AI Studio. When I do so, I'm going to be presented with this experience, and I can go ahead and click on Assistants and create a new assistant. You can kind of think of an assistant as a chat bot or chat experience. I'm going to go ahead and use a deployment. In this case, I'm going to be using the GPT-4o deployment, and I can provide instructions. Here I'm saying that this is going to be 4th Coffee Supplier Invoice Assistant, being able to answer questions regarding invoices and that sort of thing. Now, so what I've done is I've gone ahead and uploaded or ingested some data files into the offering, and that's going to be this Master Services Agreement Word document. So here we could take a quick look at the Word document, typical sort of legalese about payment terms, obligations, performance penalties, termination, etc. Right? So this is something that I go ahead and ingest into the service itself, and then I can expose that functionality to the suppliers or vendors in this case, and we can go ahead and retrieve data or reason on top of that particular data set. Now here I'll go ahead and ask a question of, what are the net payment terms for invoices? And what we'll see is a response here shortly that references that Word document that we just talked about. And here we can see that the payment shall be made within 30 days of the date of receipt. So that sounds pretty good. And next we can go ahead and ask, what about performance penalties for late deliveries? Okay, and then here we can see that there are performance penalties. It's calculated as 10% of the total invoice amount for each day the delivery is late. And once again, that's information that we're going to go ahead and find inside of the document itself, both the payment terms and the late deliveries. Now, that's great. That's static data. That's data that exists in a document that doesn't change often. And so that's a great use case for ingestion and retrieval. What about real-time data? That's a use case that doesn't align itself great to leveraging an LLM to be able to reason on top of that. So what we can go ahead and do is we can go ahead and create a function. And what we do have is some built-in integration with Azure AI. And we can go ahead and configure a logic app that we would want to call in this particular scenario. So I've got one here called plugin fourth coffee, and I can go ahead and save that. Now, what this workflow is going to do is it's going to receive a request here from the chatbot. We're then going to go ahead and perform a query against that particular invoice, do some parsing and shaping of a response message, and then send it back to the chat experience. So here, let's go ahead and ask for the status of my invoice. That's 1, 4 zeros, and then a 6. And what we're going to see is that we're going to call this workflow in the back end, and it's going to be able to retrieve this information for us. So we're able to complement this existing data found that's been ingested into our LLM with actual real-time data, giving you best of both worlds. So hopefully this illustrates kind of the power of using logic apps to complement these existing conversational platforms.